Yes.
Bloodsport itself. What I wanted to ask you were, how instrumental and involved were you in the casting
Oh,
of the movie?
oh, great question. I was there for everything, right down to even picking Jean-Claude Van Damme. Jean-Claude had done a movie called No Retreat, No Surrender. It was brought to my attention to see this movie because he looked just like me. And in fact, if you look, again, you go to my website, frankdukesbloodsport.com, you look at it, you'll see pictures there of me and him at that time when I fought. We look very much identical. And that's how he got picked. Now, I understand he had a run-in with Menachem Golan and they met. But what was the kicker was I went to bat for him and I fought for this guy who's an unknown. And you got to understand, look from my point of view, they wanted to put in like Michael Dudikoff or somebody who had a following to play me in the movie. And that was more of a guarantee the movie would get released, more of a guarantee to have an audience because you have a name actor, right? And instead, here I am saying, no, let's go with this unknown and let me train him for 3 months. I'll make him spectacular. And I did. If you look at the difference in his movements, and I'm not trying to say this from a bragging point of view, but a real technical point of view. If you look at his appearance and how he moves in No Retreat, No Surrender, or you see in other films that he's done, he's very, very stilted. And when I got a hold of Jean-Claude, I worked for him for 3 months. We worked tirelessly, 3 days a week. He'd come to my school after I closed classes, like about 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. And we worked past midnight to get him really crisp, smooth. And I also was very blessed to have a guy named Hubie Kearns in my life. Now, Hubie Kearns was the stunt coordinator. He doubled Adam West in Batman, but he was one of the stuntmen Hall of Famers. He really was an expert at movie making. He met Bruce Lee when he was doing the Green Hornet, and he's the one who basically taught Lee movie fighting. And so here I have the guy, the master who taught Lee all these secrets of movie fighting, and he's teaching me. And I met Red Morgan, and that's where I came up with different ideas on like how to play with shutter speed. Nobody done that. Everybody's played with film speed, but nobody played with shutter speed when it came to making this film. Also the angles. I fought for different angles. David Worth and me sat there for hours. Every day we made sure we rode together back to the hotel in the same van. And we went over the different angles. And David is brilliant. I mean, he's really brilliant. And we came up with a different way to shoot this movie that nobody had shot before. Where I said, look, I took this guy who's really got a great background in dance. He can memorize like multiple movements. And instead of doing all these chop movements, what if we kind of shoot 3 cameras and we do a long through the whole choreography? It doesn't stop. Okay. We just run it, the whole fight scene this way. And unfortunately, there's some stuff that never made it to the movie that I thought would have been brilliant. There's an aerial fight scene that we did. It was just, I mean, it took your breath away. But ultimately, they cut it the way they wanted to cut it. Carl Kress was an Academy Award-winning editor who edited the film. I don't like it when people try to kind of hone in on that. Say, oh, yeah, Jean-Claude edited it, and that's what made it so great. No, Jean-Claude, he did add to it, but Carl, you got to give Carl the credit for how he assembled that film. And because of my background in actually writing Bloodsport, I did a lot of things in there that I made sure were in the script that would translate over to when I was the choreographer. I choreographed that movie as well. And so as a choreographer, I made sure that I could do what we call in movie making foreshadowing. I could set up scenes early on in the movie that would pay off later, like the how to reach deep down in yourself and find that moment of respite when everything's kind of taken away from you by surprise. No matter how great your plans are, right, in life, all of a sudden something will come out of nowhere and it'll just totally tank you. That's one of the messages of the movie. That's where all this stolen valor crap comes from. Okay, remember I was telling you about Rambo and how he put those scenes in it. So what happens is he violated the contract. Mel Friedman and Chris Cosby had to come in and repair Bloodsport and really put it back. what you're really seeing in Bloodsport is really the work of, I think, Mel Friedman and Chris Cosby more than Sheldon. Although Sheldon did have a lot of things, but there's nothing he wrote in there as far as Bloodsport itself that really didn't come through me. Sheldon wanted a career, and he wanted to poison my relationship with Jean-Claude. So all of a sudden, at that same time, here comes all these bogus flyers saying I was a Medal of Honor winner, or I'm this, I'm that, and I've never made those claims. Anybody around me who's been close knows those claims, and it was just Sheldon was stabbing my back when I confronted him about it. Even when the LA Times came out with a hit piece on me in 1988, when the movie came out, my detractors paid off this guy to write an editorial, which really only gained ground when the internet happened, by the way, because nobody took it seriously when it first came out. It was buried in the back section of the LA Times and the San Fernando section, and it's an editorial. It's not even a real article. It said my instructor didn't exist. I bought the trophy. Just the most hoaxy things you could ever say to inflame people. But it was all done to protect what was an ongoing consumer fraud and about ninjutsu being a martial art. And they wanted to say, oh, I'm a fake ninja. And I was trying to pass myself off as this when it was the opposite. And Sheldon kind of got in with that crowd. And it was to his benefit. He drove a wedge between me and Jean-Claude this way. But whenever I confront him, he'd be like my best friend. It wasn't until years later that it all kind of came out. And I go, here you are. When I confront you, you're lying to my face, but behind my back, you're the one really doing this. And what's interesting is one of the pamphlets that they use as evidence to say, I claim I won all these medals and all this stuff, uses a headshot. That headshot was taken by Sheldon when we did this short film called Firefight that I helped produce for him to help him get him his career going. So with Sheldon, it's just nothing but a total betrayal. Where he's really upset is when I sued Jean-Claude Van Damme over the quest because, I wrote that. And if you look at the screenplay cover page for the shooting script, it says story by Jean-Claude Van Damme and material supplied by Sheldon Lettich, based on material by Sheldon Lettich. And the reality is it was written by myself. Then I ended up, the ICM they wanted a bigger budget, so they said, okay, we want to attach Ed Kamar's name to it and do a rewrite. So they did a rewrite of my screenplay. I ended up getting hit by Zane Frazier, ended up in a coma, was going to die. Sheldon actually came to my VA room. He thought I was out. I could barely open my eyes. I couldn't function, but I could hear, and I could hear him on the phone talking about how they were going to take this project away from me, and they did. And it shows you what's kind of interesting. And this is a very, I think, interesting point how the universe works. If it wasn't for Zane Frazier hitting me and getting that sneak attack on me, I would have dropped dead because I had brain tumors from the days I fought. All right. They found them because of that. And because I ended up with a lawsuit of that and I got the money, I had enough money to pursue Jean-Claude Van Damme over the quest. I did get my credit. It's on the screenplay. It wasn't there before. You can look at the poster. You can see my name on the quest, story by Frank Dukes.